were talking about college campuses yesterday, everything that's going on, and obviously I'm going to ask you about that. And but as I was musing about it yesterday, I said, hey, does anyone have any college campus experiences? Like, let me know what's going on, your kids, whatever. And we had some people who called in and said they're going great. Their kids are making it out alive. We had a couple of sad stories, and I got a bunch of emails from parents whose daughters in particular are totally different people now. And they have great lament and regrets, which is really sad. But we had a gentleman call in, Steve from Tennessee, whose high school senior son doesn't know, and they don't know, if they should go to college. He wants to be a marine biologist, for whatever that's worth. Who, what high schooler knows exactly what they want to be? But all right, so we'll go with it. And I think that's a metaphor, right? He wants to be a marine biologist in college, or go to trade school and be a welder. What would your advice be to these parents of this young man?
Wow. Well, congratulations first on having a young man who has such specificity in his expectations. We need more welders in America. I mean, I'll start with that. And we need less people going to college to learn useless things or become indoctrinated into chant from the river to the sea. I look at people like Charlie Kirk, who never went to college, who became incredibly successful, autodidact, incredibly intelligent as well. And I see the argument for not spending hundreds and thousands of dollars and risking getting a useless piece of paper or losing your child to the left. Sarcastically, my advice is go and work in the Trump White House and then see what happens to your kids, because, my son survived 4 years at Stanford, is a rock-ribbed conservative because of what they did to me and to my family when I was in the White House. But seriously, those are two very interesting options. He can flip a coin, or he can try to see what it's like in college, and then if he doesn't like it, go to that trade school and learn welding. But, he actually has a cornucopia of choices there, so he's actually in a better position than most.
Yeah, I think debt is a huge concern, but almost the least of the concerns of what could happen to your son on a college campus these days. We'll talk. I don't know if we'll get tomorrow or the next day. We'll talk about the Title IX changes that have happened on college campuses as well. So your son could be accused of rape and their life destroyed. There's a risk.
Stories I heard, it's just, I'm not pro crazy sex life and promiscuity in college, but the stories my son and his friends on his rowing team told me about how it's like you're constantly walking on eggshells. The numbers of times he actually escorted drunken girls home just so something wouldn't happen that she wouldn't regret with somebody else the next day, and then accuse his friend of doing something untoward, and then he'd be kicked out of the college. The whole relationship between men and women. Look, I don't know how they function, and well, we know how they function. We see the chronic rates of serious relationships and the fear that each sex has of each other. What has feminism brought us? And when are women going to wake up that first, second, third, fourth, fifth wave feminism has created 2, and it will soon be 3 generations of women who will just be sad and alone by the time they hit their 40s. I mean, it's horrific. What is the long-term demographic effect on Western civilization from feminism? We have yet to know, but it will not be good, my friend.
We talked about this in the first hour, because the last 24 hours, all I've thought is Steve from Tennessee and his son. And one of the reasons I suggested the welding, or why that could be a good choice, is because that could turn you into the type of man that the woman you would want to marry would be attracted to.
Yeah. There's something, and I don't want to get too philosophical, but there's something deeply spiritual about a human being, about a man who can make things with his hands. The woman provides us with life, nurtures a newborn inside her for 9 months. There's nothing that comes close to that for a man. But to actually, I used to do this as a kid. I had a hobby. I used to restore guns, so I used to be not too bad at metalwork and woodwork. But today I just sit in front of a microphone for 3 hours a day. It's not exactly creating stuff with my hands, but to actually make things, it's good for the soul. It's good for your sense of who you are as a human being. So, yeah, I mean, even if he wants to be the marine biologist, learn the welding on the side. You work for somebody as a tradesman, as an apprentice at the weekends. You know what one of my greatest memories is, Mike, as a child, is my parents, we weren't, I think it's funny, we didn't have a lot of money, but I never knew it, right? It's one of those cases where, my parents just made sure that I had everything. So my dad never, as long as I knew him, he never had a new car. The car we had for the longest was a 20-year-old Mercedes with the fins on the back. What were my fondest memories of my childhood? Saturday morning, what would I be doing? I'd be with my father tinkering on his car, fixing the rust spots, taking out the plugs, checking the gaps, or cleaning the points. That stays with me because it's real, and it's also a bonding experience with my father. It was working with our hands, getting our hands dirty, fixing something, and that was so glorious, and I'll never forget it.
But my hands as a radio show host are very soft and delicate, Dr. Gorka. So smooth.
You got to find a hobby, dude. My thing is I'm desperate to learn how to make knives. My brother-in-law, he's one of these guys who is so ADHD. He always has a new hobby. He went from growing bonsais to mountain biking, and then he taught himself from scratch with a smelter, with everything, how to make hunting knives. He made me one. Absolutely beautiful. Carved wooden handle, beautiful D2 cool. blade. Every man can do that. Every man should have something that is physical creation that they do on the side, whatever the day job is. Even if you're a neuroscientist, brain surgeon, do some bonsai clipping at the weekend or something.
That's great. If one chooses to go on these college campuses, particularly Columbia, but now it's everywhere. Now it's USC and University of Texas and Minnesota, it's everywhere. What are you seeing that disturbs you the most about what's happening at these places? Surely, no one's surprised anymore, but
I don't think there's anything that. How about this? It disturbs me the most is submission to the indoctrination. I mean, just mindless, unthinking submission. I have to give full credit. Last week, I was invited to American University by the new college Republicans, and this is allegedly, according to a recent study, the wokest college in America. I was very disappointed. The lunatics didn't come and heckle me. We had some great police officers there, but they didn't even show up. I guess it was past their bedtime. And one of the best questions I got in the Q&A, so Luke and everybody else, thank you for inviting me, is they asked me their advice. What advice would I give them at a super woke college as Republicans? And I told them, look, my job is very different from theirs. My job is to be a flamethrower and to keep the MAGA base mobilized and optimistic. They have to choose their battles. Don't walk into every classroom as if, you're expecting that this is the day that the professor's going to throw you out because of your opinions. However, even though you choose your battles, you've got to cleave to the truth. You've got to cleave to the truth and try as much as you can not to censor yourself. Push back where possible, bide your time where necessary, but at the end of the day, keep the flame of truth alive. That's my advice to anyone who has a child or who is in that position.
I think that's right. An interesting narrative is unfolding on these college campuses. I've seen it twice now, and here's AOC, that as these protesters are gaining energy, it's like the Black Lives Matter of of today, right before an election as well, surely lasting until Chicago. Could you believe the Democrats are having their convention in Chicago? Of all places?
I mean, the SDS and Students for Democratic Society screwed up the last time they went there. The days of rage fizzled out like a wet firework, and then they're doing it there again. I mean, what cretins. Have they opened a history book lately?
Maybe they want it. But I've heard this narrative that well, let me read AOC. Not only did Columbia make the horrific decision to mobilize the NYPD on their own students, but the units called in have some of the most violent reputations on the force. So it's the NYPD counterterrorism unit. So at least some of the guys have that on their jackets they're wearing. NYPD has promised the city they wouldn't deploy SRG to protest. So why are these counter-terror units here? So there's this idea that the police shouldn't be involved in what they're doing.
Well, of course. I mean, the police should be defunded. But let me ask you a question, because I'm on the show every day. I keep the TV running, muted in the background as I'm on air, and I see this constant coverage from the conservative media, the campuses. And I asked my team yesterday, and I got a surprising answer. Do you think these pro-Hamas protests will actually matter on November 5th? Because I doubted it, but what do you think?
Will it matter to whom? Will it have will it have
a positive impact on the good guys winning the election on November 5th?
Yeah, I think it's weird. It's interesting. I think it's a horrible thing for our country. I think it's wildly relevant to Steve from Tennessee, who's deciding whether or not his children should go to these schools or not. And it's contributing to the downfall of these universities, which ultimately I think will be a good thing, although a sad thing. And I think it's encouraging other alternatives, like the University of Austin is promoting schools like Hillsdale and St. John's and these good places. So that's all good. But it's terrible for the Democrats. So in that way, it's good.
Really?
But let me just simplify.
You really think it will impact them negatively?
Yeah, I think so. They're in a bad spot with it.